Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily focus on Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. So it's been a hot minute since I've talked about Starfinder, and since I've recently got my hands on the new Starfinder player core, I'm excited to crack into it and talk about it. Couple of things in case you're just joining us. Starfinder is a tabletop RPG made by Paizo, the same guys that do Pathfinder. They actually sent me a review copy but haven't compensated me in any other way. Thank you to Paizo. Now, Starfinder is a science fantasy game, meaning that there's high technology but also magic. Paizo, the makers of Starfinder, put out a playtest for the game last year, and I've already covered that extensively. And I don't really want to repeat everything I've already said here, so this is going to be a loose overview of the changes from the Starfinder playtest to the official release. First, I'll do a short and quick overview of any major ancestry changes, but the bulk of the video will be about changes made to the 6 core classes in Starfinder. And then at the end, I'll take a quick second to talk about a few of the changes to equipment and spells that I noticed. I'm not going to do a deep dive into each ancestry and class. I just don't have that kind of bandwidth. If you want more information, I'll link to my previous Starfinder videos in the description, as not a lot has changed thematically between the playtest and the official release. Alright, let's start off with some general stuff. The official release has a lot of new really cool artwork, and almost all of the typos are cleared up, if that bothered anyone. Minor things like the Witchworper not getting weapon expertise at level 11 has been fixed, so yes, now they actually get weapon expertise when they should. I'm not going to call out each of these minor typos and oversight fixes, just know that they are there. Alright, ancestries. First of all non-human ancestries now have an ancestry lore feat, like Patra lore or Kasatha lore. Not all ancestries had that before, but now they do. Alright, quick overview of each ancestry just to refresh everyone's memory. Androids are biomechanical synthetic lifeforms, though they do have a soul. Barathu are sentient floating jellyfish creatures that can futz with their own genetics. Humans are humans, I shouldn't need to talk about them. Kasatha are aliens with 4 arms and a strong sense of tradition. They also view it as culturally rude to expose their mouths. Lashunta are a mildly telepathic human-like ancestry, except they have antennae and their skin tends to be green. Patra are a feline-like ancestry who lived under an oppressive regime of Vesk. Shirin are an insect-like ancestry. Their progenitors, who are still around, are called the Swarm and are a hive mind of domineering locusts. However, Shirin have independent thought and they generally don't want to do the domination thing. Skittermanders are traditionally overeager aliens with 6 arms who are addicted to helping others. Vesk are a lizard-like ancestry who have a very warrior-style culture. And the last ancestry, Yosoki, are rat or mouse people. The first major change is that the 2 ancestries that had ancestral negatives, the android and skittermander, lost those negatives. Androids lost emotionally unaware, which made them worse at social stuff, and skittermanders lost overeager enthusiasm, which made them worse at saves versus emotion effects. I kinda like this change. If you want to play an emotionally unavailable android, you can roleplay one. No need to punish players who want to play a charismatic android. And emotion effects can be debilitating, so don't hurt skittermanders with a penalty to those saves. The only other base ancestry change was Yosoki got a base bite attack. That was a feat, it's now a base ability, though the damage die did get downgraded from D6 to D4, so that's fine, I guess. Some ancestries lost some feats or heritages. Sadly, human no longer has the Aslanti heritage that gave them a free cantrip, and for some reason Patra can't pounce anymore, but not a whole lot of changes besides that. One thing that did not change was that the species with multiple arms like Kasatha or Skittermander can only use 2 arms at a time, and it takes an action to mentally switch gears between arms you are using. There are feats that mitigate this, and it's mostly a game balance thing. Without this rule, you could do things like wield a fortress shield, a D12 greatsword, and still have a hand free to perform combat maneuvers, and that could greatly mess with the game balance of the Pathfinder-Starfinder system. I do want to point out, though, that switching hands does not have the manipulate trait, so it does not trigger reactions like the swap action does. And I do think you can hold items in your non-active hand, they just don't count as being actively wielded, So like you couldn't use a staff in your non-active hand, but you could have it ready to go for when you use the switch hands action. Real quick, there are two versatile heritages. The Borai are creatures that only mostly died. This means that they have the undead trait and are treated as undead, but are healed like living creatures. Not much changed with them, pretty solid versatile heritage. I will say that I like that they can be healed like a living creature. That lets players play cool, undead edgelords, but still being able to be healed by the party healer. Unfortunately, Prismini were only partially fixed. This is a group of people infused with drift energy, that's the Starfinder faster than light travel system. Now in the playtest they had this completely busted ancestry feat that gave them the electric arc cantrip that let them fully power an electric device. This allowed players to fire off things like the Gatling laser without even thinking of reloading. Now it's reduced to just a few charges per casting and it's more reasonable. It's still really good and it's still better than the cantrip reload weapon, but it's at least more reasonable now. My major problem with Prismini though is that they can still enter the drift, that is the faster than light travel system, on any starship as long as they are piloting it. It doesn't matter if the ship has a working drift drive or any drift drive at all. In my mind, this is a mistake. It just cuts off a ton of story options. Do you want to have a story where you have to find a drift drive to escape a planet? Nope, Prismini. Do you want to have a story where you're stranded in an escape pod and have to survive? Nope, Prismini. Want to have a story where people are trying to get drift drive fuel? Nope, just use a Prismini. I just don't like this ability. Okay, sorry, rant over. Moving on to the 6 classes. The first is Envoy, and these are a charisma-based martial character. Think Bard, only better at fighting but no spells. Instead of spells, they get these class abilities and we'll talk about them. Compared to the playtest, the Envoy class has been simplified and streamlined. The proficiencies are largely the same, but the first big thing is that they lost the social mastermind ability. This is the ability that let them study a target and hound them online, kind of like the subject of an investigator's investigation. This is now a series of feats that they can get if they want. The biggest change though is how the directives work. Previously it was complicated. You'd spend an action to give everyone around you a directive. Then if you followed your own advice, the directive got better, and there were ways to boost a directive as you leveled up, and it was a mess. It was a lot to keep track of. Now each directive is a 1 or 2 action activity. If used as a 1 action activity, you and your friends get a bonus, and many of them, if used as a 2 action activity, let you attack and give you a better bonus. Like the Get 'em directive, which all envoys get. As 1 action, it gives everyone a +1 to hit someone. It used to give a penalty to AC, now it's a bonus to hit. If used as a 2 action activity, the Envoy can also attack them, allies deal more damage, and the Envoy adds their charisma bonus to damage. Also, Envoys get a new directive with their subclass and can get new directives with their feats. They didn't used to get a new directive with their subclass, and some of these new directives are pretty good. Get 'em also switched from a penalty to an enemy's AC and reflex to a bonus for allies to hit. This is something. Penalty to reflex would have been nice, but the penalty to AC didn't stack with flanking, and now it does because it's a bonus to hit, so decent trade-off, I think. Also, a couple of subclasses were cut, but they wouldn't have worked with the new paradigm anyway, and they can always add in the piloting Envoy subclass or whatever with other books. Now, looking at this right off the bat, an Envoy's Get 'em looks straight up worse than what Bards can do. A Bard's base song, Courageous Anthem, gives everyone a +1 to hit and damage against all enemies, whereas an Envoy is only against 1 person. Here's the thing, an Envoy's damage boost gets better over time, whereas a Bard's doesn't. So the Envoy starts off weaker, but can, in some circumstances, be better at higher levels. Plus it's not a spell, so it works in the mana wastes or whatever, which is a nice little bonus. I like the Envoy. The fact that they start off with 2 directive options for fighting is good, and their directives are streamlined and much easier to keep track of. Also, they get to keep their other playtest things that I didn't mention, like at level 3 they can get a free skill feat that they can retrain at the start of each day. Mystic is up next. They are a spontaneous, wisdom-based spellcaster that can cast from either the Divine, Primal, or Occult list depending on their subclass. Their shtick is that they had an epiphany about the underpinnings of the universe, and that has given them spellcasting. They can be religious, though they don't have to be. So like the Envoy, a lot of the Mystic has been streamlined and made easier to handle. In the playtest, they had a Vitality Network. While in combat every round, their Vitality Network gains points up to a maximum, and they can spend those points on a 1-to-1 ratio to heal others that they have bonded with. Refocusing allows them to edit those bonds up to 10 creatures and also recovers their Vitality Network. On top of that, they are a spellcaster with 4 spells per spell rank. The last thing about the playtest Mystic was that they had a subclass which determined their spellcasting tradition. Additionally, each subclass gave whoever was healed with their Vitality Network a special bonus. Also, they got a bunch of other abilities and focus spells. The Mystic is now a 6 HP per level class instead of 8, and now their Vitality Network is capped out at how much it can transfer at one time. These two things, I think, really help reduce the Mystic down a bit so they can be more in line with the power level of, say, Pathfinder's Cleric. There was talk that the class was too powerful in the playtest because of everything they got plus 4 spells per spell rank. Now with 6 HP per level and a cap on Vitality Network, I feel like they're more in line with something like Pathfinder's Oracle. Their subclasses have also just been cleaned up and streamlined now, that's nice to see. Two last things. One is that the Healing Mystic used to be able to heal anyone, even undead, but now when they transfer HP from their Vitality Network, the healing helps counteract negative status effects. I'm always up for removing status conditions, and I like the healing connection can now harm undead, which can always be clutch. The second thing is that some subclasses do not give you your tradition spellcasting skill, like maybe divine spellcasting without the religion skill, so be on the lookout for that. Moving on to operative, and they have both been fixed and not. Previously, the way an operative worked is that they could use their special aim action on a target as an action to shoot them for extra damage. They started off expert in quote-unquote guns and got up to legendary in those weapons, but only up to expert in other weapons. The big problem was that there was a feat that essentially gave them a reactive strike with ranged weapons. This meant that if anyone drew a weapon, made a ranged attack, moved, cast a spell, or did any one of 100 other things, the operative got a free shot with their high accuracy. The new operative has moved that feat from 2nd level to 6th level, and now it only works on the guy you last aimed at. Also, it can no longer disrupt actions. It's still really good, but not nearly as broken. Also, they cleared up a bunch of stuff, made the Striker the close combat subclass actually work now. It's all a lot better. Still really good, but it's more reasonable now. Until they get to level 17, that is. At level 17, their multiple attack penalties decrease to essentially that of a Flurry Ranger. Remember, this is on top of their legendary proficiency with guns and bonus damage from the aim action. Listen, I have not played a high-level operative yet, but that looks really broken to me. I know one of the most broken combos in Pathfinder is to have a ranger pass their Flurry's edge bonus to a fighter. And this is like that, but more action economy efficient and all in one package. Heck, Pathfinder itself warns you against explicitly doing this thing. I have one last minor gripe for the operative. A gun is defined as an analog or tech ranged weapon. This means no archaic Pathfinder weapon is a gun. So an operative can't use an arquebus, but since a shuriken drone is a ranged tech weapon, it is a gun? Okay, sure, fine, whatever. Feels like they could have just used the old Pathfinder firearm rules for Starfinder, but I'm down for a ninja operative throwing techno shuriken, so I guess it's fine. Next up are Salarians. They are a mystical class without spells, kind of like a champion or thaumaturge. They have a connection to the stars and can use that connection to forge a melee weapon, an orb that shoots ranged attacks, and also have a kind of energy shield. They also have 2 modes that they can be in, either photon mode, which is focused on the light a star emits, or graviton attuned, which is focused on the gravity of a star. When combat started, a playtest Salarian got to form a melee energy weapon, have a mote of solar energy as a ranged weapon, and a reactive field. The melee weapon is the big draw, as it can look like whatever the Salarian wants it to look like, as long as it follows the basic rules. But they can change up its attributes and traits by refocusing. Want to make a mace? Sword? A stand from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Yeah, that's all doable. Previously, Salarians had a subclass that determined if they were more geared towards photon or graviton mode. Now, any Salarian could be in photon or graviton mode, but they had an affinity for one or the other. Also, they had 2 unique traits. If an activity had the cycle trait, it forcefully shifted them from graviton to photon mode or vice versa, and if something had the disharmony trait, it made them unattuned. They lost their weapon and everything until they took an action to get back into a mode, kind of like overflow actions from a kineticist. In the remaster, a Salarian gets 1 more skill than normal, but the big thing is they completely lost the Salarian subclass. Now they're one of only 3 classes to not get a subclass or anything even approaching a subclass. Instead, Salarians can do any of the things. There were some minor improvements. They made it so that the ranged attack thing called a solar flare actually works now, though it still has pitiful range. There is a feat now to bump up the range though, so that's nice. I would have liked to have seen an option to make ranged attacks a Salarian's primary focus, but it's at least nice that it works now. The big downside I see with them is that they still only get to Legendary in their Salarian ranged and melee attacks, and that's not until level 19, same as the playtest. I don't know, seems like it's kinda worse off than the Fighter or Operative or Gunslinger who get Legendary in attacks way sooner. On the other hand, you can't be disarmed and you can smuggle your quote-unquote weapons past security, so that's something I guess. Still, 6 levels later than an Operative or Fighter is huge. Oh, and they don't have an option to use gravity powers as telekinesis like they did in Starfinder 1. I would have liked to have seen that. Next up is Soldier. Now, Soldier is a big, beefy class, 10 HP per level, and their key attribute is Constitution, making them tougher than even kineticists. Their big thing is that they are good at hitting a lot of people at once with sweeping attacks, doing area effect damage with normal weapons. The way this worked in the playtest was through a class feature called Primary Target. When they attacked with an area weapon, either with something like a rocket launcher or the cone of an automatic weapon, they got to shoot the guy in the center an extra time for free. This did not increase their multiple attack penalty. Also, they got up to Legendary with Fortitude saves, armor, and class DCs, which is crazy. They also got a bunch of minor other things that helped them, like using their Constitution to qualify for armor and using their Con instead of Charisma for intimidation. Also, enemies that fail to save against their area effect attacks are suppressed, which is a negative status effect. Oh, and in case you wanted to be a melee soldier, there was a subclass for that. It let them make area attacks with two-handed melee weapons. And yeah, most of the soldier remains unchanged. Still legendary in all three things, which is wild to me. The only major change is how their area effect primary target thing works. It used to say that you got a free attack on someone after the area effect attack ended. Now you make a free attack before as a free action, so it works with most area guns now. And if you hit, you do damage, and it makes their save against area effect attacks worse. I'll put it on screen so you can read it. So it increases the multiple attack penalty now, but it makes your area attacks more likely to hit. Listen, I think a soldier is really strong, maybe too strong. Legendary in Fortitude saves, armor, and class DCs, plus any area fire attacks add the weapon's enhancement bonus to hit to their DC, so that's Legendary DC plus 3 at the highest levels. That's crazy. During the playtest, a lot of people were hating on the soldier, and I personally don't see it. They are crazy good. Compare their 3 legendary proficiencies to the 1 of Salarian. Now, the melee soldier did lose their reactive strike-like feature called Punitive Strike. It's now just a feat any soldier can get at level 6, but other than that, not much else has changed. I do have one minor gripe, and that is that there are not a lot of good melee weapons for soldiers. Since they are making a lot of ranged attacks, remember their primary target gives them a free ranged attack, they want a good dexterity. So having a good two-handed finesse weapon like an Elven Curve Blade would be a great backup weapon for them, but there's nothing like that in the core Starfinder gear. Okay, final class, the Witchworper. They are an intelligence-based spellcaster with 4 spells per spell rank. They are a spontaneous, arcane, or occult spellcaster based on their subclass. Their thing is that they have somehow been unmoored from reality. Maybe they're from another timeline, maybe they're a time traveler. Maybe they just see the world like the Matrix. Either way, the unmooring from reality lets them alter it in strange ways. In the playtest, their big thing was that they could generate a bubble of unreality called a quantum field that they could mess with, and certain abilities only worked within the field. This field needed to be sustained, but there were actions you could take called anchoring actions, and the anchoring trait sustained your field as well as doing something else. And their subclass determined what their field actually did. They also got a second mini-subclass called an Anchor that determined how they kept a grip on reality, and it gave them minor benefits. And the new official version is all pretty much the same. Though there are some minor changes, the anchoring mini-subclasses got streamlined and easier to use, but I didn't notice too many differences. I don't know how I feel about the Witchworper. On the one hand, their zone plus mini-subclasses plus 8 HP per level, plus starting with light armor all kinda makes them better than a sorcerer at first glance. But their zone stuff is kinda limited, and a lot of players in the playtest said that they felt underwhelmed by them, so I don't know, I guess it balances out? Okay, speed round for some minor changes I noticed. Armor now upgrades at the same rate as Pathfinder, it didn't used to. Ammunition is now more affordable. Salarian crystals now affect the melee option as well as the ranged option, but you will need a separate crystal for each melee and ranged option, or you're going to have to take an action to swap them between the two. Sadly, the Ricochet spell no longer does force damage, which is a shame. Would have been nice to have a force damage cantrip, but force damage is so good I understand why they changed it. One major thing I caught was that there are no rules for buying archaic weapons, which is a weapon not made from modern meta materials. Essentially, it's any item from Pathfinder 2. This is a problem for two reasons. One is that there's a human heritage that makes you familiar with one archaic weapon, so it's explicitly called out in the book. The other issue is, well, there's some major gaps in the weapon equipment section. There's no short sword, for example, no elven curved blade, and certain classes like the melee operative and the soldier could really use those options. Hey guys, Editor Cyprime here. I did notice after taking a second look that there is a short sword-like weapon called the Talon, but there are still big gaps missing. Like, just one example, there's no two-handed finesse weapon like the elven curved blade, which is what a soldier would mostly want. I don't know, seems like a quick aside in the equipment section for the availability of archaic weapons from Pathfinder would have been called for. Well, that's about all I have to say for the Starfinder player core. I know this was a long one, so thanks for sticking with me. Again, if you're lost, go check out the playtest video, as most of the stuff I didn't mention changing in this video would have been same as in the playtest. And as a reminder, I have a Patreon. I'm going to try and post something fun there once a month, but honestly, it's just a way to keep this channel financially viable. Just a few bucks a month, and I'm toying with the idea of adding a limited higher tier where you can request a specific video. Let me know in the comments what you think. And make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!